in order to move, in order to move through the levels, you got to move past the fucking levels. In order to operate at your highest efficiency, you got to become impartial. You got to become impartial. In order to become impartial, one must become vulnerable. In order for one to become vulnerable, one must become honest. In order for one to become honest, one must become intimate. This is the root to understanding your emotions. The emotional rhythm of the cadences is what it, don't matter what the experience may be or the result is. The result doesn't matter. To get past that point of reaction, you got to stop looking at the result. I had to learn to look past the result. For me to seek resolve, I had to look past looking at the result. I had to go past that point of my comfort zone. I had to go past the point of my comfort zone because staying within my comfort zone always led me to whatever I would search for or whatever would come into my space, I would try to seek this false sense of ownership. I would try to find a way to own it. I would try to find a way to make it mine. That's why I kept saying things like my job, my this, my that. Like a greetings, like a child. I acted in the childlike mindset. So in every life, when I came back and I forgot some shit, heavy ass sigh, came back, forgot, I just picked up on the same debts. Same debt was already there. This week, we've been getting deep into the aspects of these debts. The conversations that we don't want to have. This week in the God Hour podcast, we got into the aspects of the state of redemption or renting your happiness. Talking about the jaded apology. And until you understand the process, grand evening, until you understand that process of apology and the investing, what's up, the investing into the true aspects of purging, not just trying to stay feeling good, you're never going to accept the apology that you need to give to yourself. You're always going to have stipulations. It's cool to learn your lineage. It's great. I push clients, I push anybody that speaks to me to learn their lineage. It's cool to learn who you are, to get a sense of confidence in what you are and where you're from. But still, most of us do it to a point of reaction. You're still living in that point of reaction, that comfort zone. It's good that you learned that you came from a lineage of witches. You came from a lineage of brujas. It's cool that you're learning more about yourself. But what about those stories? See, those stories are the points that give us the reflection of ourselves. That's what we got to get into. Or else we just going to add more to the collateral clauses of this is the way that I am. It just echoes. That same traumatic effort echoes. That same intention echoes. And you don't know why you were drawn to it. But since you're stuck in that point of reaction of not dealing with the aspects of your shadow, for a lot of us, that's what we did. We weren't react. I want to react. The moment that you looked at it, you wanted to synthesize it, put the variables together, and keep doing what you were doing. Ultimately, look at the state of, think about this shit. When you look at the conscious community, the ones that are not integrated with their shadow, and you look at the levels, do you really understand what it is to even build anything? You can't build anything from a point to where you have not accessed that level. You only can build at that level. For us, a lot of times we keep, just like that trauma, and we're gonna get into the generational trauma aspect, the same way that your grandmother seeked to keep the family together is the same way that you're trying to seek to keep your family together, because you're still looking at it from a bias. I don't care what conversation you had, whether your go-to is there's a nigga that ain't willing to have money, there's a chick that don't understand this, it don't matter about that aspect. What you keep trying to tell yourself to convince yourself why you're not moving forward, why you're not expounding, why you're not doing your work that you came down here to do. All of that shit's a fucking excuse or the byproduct based on the experience of the thought of the emotional aspect that you're not dealing with. You can build right now, you can build an entire company right now off of your insecurity. And you can sell your insecurity the entire time. Not because you want to, but because you have to. You have to keep that cadence or your shit will not move. That's the truth to the aspects of your trauma. Living inside of existing with your trauma. Living in that state of reaction. That means that cadence must be, because you got to think about the law of vibration. Everything down here is in order based on those laws. Everything down here is based on the order of those laws. You must accept that point. That's a point that I had to accept while going through this work. That's a point that you have to accept. Everything down here is moving in the cadence of the law. If not, it could not exist. It's what you put on the variable of the good and the bad. Oh, that's malicious. Oh, this is evil. Oh, this is that. That keeps it, that you keep missing the lesson inside of the space that's going on inside of you're in conflict. Therefore, your world is in conflict. It's not about, and we get deeper into this aspect because it's not about the shadows that you do know about. It's not about the shadows that you do know about. Because even those shadows are a result of your absolute. Even those shadows are a result of your absolute. This healing shit is destructive. They're even a result of the absolute. They're a result of the emotional aspect. What I'm getting at is the emotional cadence. I talked about it briefly in the podcast. The same regret that your the same regret regardless of the space or the experience, the same regret that your mother held, your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother held in based on her experiences, where she was at, are what ushered in your mother, your grandmother, or what ushered in your mother. So why do you think that shit stopped at you? Same regret, festered deep down in your hell, the root of your hell loop, the insecurity, the traumatic experience. It's nothing more than an echo of that point. That's why that's when we say, when you heal yourself, you heal 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. It's time to step out of that light. The light is only based on what you're preserving. The light is only based on the perception. The light is only based on the projection of whatever needs to feel or create the experiences for that space. And everything that you created on top of that is the layer upon layer of your reaction to it. But what if you really learn to respond to it? What if you learn how to respond? See, response takes accountability. I'll always break this down. Response takes accountability. Response takes accountability and willingness. See, that point of reaction for a lot of us, that even when I'm talking from this experience, where I'm not willing to move, I will naturally create in my thought, my ego will create a responsibility for me to maintain inside of that space. And now I shall learn through the experiences of the responsibility I created inside of that space in order for me to move. You've been doing this shit unconsciously your entire life. The thing is, you forgot that you put it together. See, I had to realize it's past the levels. I had to get past everything that you get trapped in. Ooh, it's the matrix. Ooh, it's the levels. There's the matrix. You got to go past all of that shit to understand how these cadences come into play. It does me no good. It does me no good in my aptitude of thought now, in the way that I think, in the aspects of me creating the new cadence, that new plan, and being true to that aspect of your authentic self. When you're healing yourself, when you're going through that healing, you're going into that shadow, you're taking that ownership. None of this shit is about suppressing. See, every time we look at these, we look at the new age aspect, and it's always based on this. It's a suppression narrative. Even now, when you're looking at the aspects of the vaccine, and you look at the soon as I saw Delta variant, all I saw was sleep. All I saw was consciousness, a collective consciousness, everybody on that same wave, the lower aspect. You've always been conscious. You've always been conscious. There's levels to your consciousness, the lower levels of your consciousness and the higher levels of your consciousness of you being into your God self. And that's why when motherfuckers tell me they conscious, if an old head, if a motherfucker come to me now and tell me they're conscious, I'm gonna say, what are you aware of? I'm aware of the no. You ain't deep enough. But the difference is I can accept them where they're at. See, a part of your healing, when you come into your healing aspects, you coming into this work, is you have to be impartial. See, me as a shaman, I am impartial. Me as every level that I take on, that is a part of my becoming, and it's about becoming, not ooh, I want to embrace this. It's becoming it. I have to understand that in every level that I come into, the only way out of that level is to become impartial. That means doing whatever it's needed for me to do based on my experiences in that level to remain impartial. This is a deep aspect when it goes into the generational trauma. That emotional aspect that you keep getting stuck in is your fear of being impartial. Because to be impartial destroys your existence. It destroys your existence, i.e. that identity that you tried to maintain. That's your fear of that unknown. Because the unknown is nothing but everything that I haven't dealt with. The unknown is what would happen if, is the question that, the unknown is the question that you keep asking yourself about your mother. What if my mother did this instead of this? She wasn't supposed to. Impartial answer. She wasn't supposed to. Your mother was operating on the same regret that you're operating on. And now you've been trying to fix it by not doing what they did. But until you understand that it's not the physical aspect of what was done, it's the emotional aspect, it's the emotional algorithm to it, you're not doing anything. You can say, okay, cool, my mom didn't get married to my dad. So now you're going through your entire life trying to find a partner in your life because your mom didn't marry your dad or your dad didn't marry your mom. So now you go through an entire pattern of the experiences to try to find somebody to marry you to avoid marrying yourself, to avoid dealing with yourself. If they can put up with me at my worst, they deserve me at my best. You don't know what the fuck you don't know the roots of what the fuck your worst is. So how the fuck do you know? How are you going to see if I don't understand the emotional aspects of what my worst is? If I don't understand the lineage of what created that aspect of myself, then how the hell can I ever create the best unless I have to submit to entitlement? So now I submit to the space. So now I go get that job. So now I go get that job, i.e. that point of persecution. Now I work this job 30, 40 hours out the week, hoping for a weekday, hoping for the end of the week so I can do some things that I want to do. Even in that aspect of that day, okay, cool. At the end of the day, I'm going to go do what I want. So I sit there and watch TV. I just stay asleep. Anything that comes into my space that challenges my thoughts, that is to teach me how to respond, I don't want to look at. It's forcing me to see myself. I lose this false sense of ownership. I lose possession. I lose the ability to act the way that I've been acting. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose my existence. That's all I've ever known. Then you go all the way back to your inner child. That's all your inner child's ever known. That's where your inner child was left off at. That's my inner child was left off back there. In the traumatic experience. You built reactions based off the traumatic experience. The same way that you built these to fill these emotional voids are the same ways that your grandmother did it. Your great-great-grandmother did it. Your great-great-grandfather did it. And then it became you. You just kept repeating yourself over and over and over and over again. And then you grandfathered yourself, you grandfather claused yourself into that space. I'm going to be the one to change it. Are you? Yeah, I'm going to change it. I'm going to get the job and I'm going to learn the aspects of finance. Okay, cool. You going to learn finance. Okay, cool. You going to go to college. You're going to be the first one to go to college. All right, great. You're going to be the first one to go to college and do all of the. That's cool. That's great. Hats off to you. Do what the fuck you feel you need to do. But at no point in time, every time you go into these points, the same shit going to keep arise. The same shit is going to arise because you're not integrated with your shadow. That's staying within that hope narrative. That's staying within that hopeful space with yourself. If I don't do this, if I don't do what my pops did here and I do this, then it's going to be the same result because it ain't got shit to do with the fuck. It has nothing to do with what you're doing to maintain the physical of the absolute. I don't care how you dress it up. It doesn't matter. One of the simplest ways that I can do it. I have my story. If I don't know what to do with my story or how to sell my story, I must now go into spaces that can teach me or help me learn my story and use my story to the full. So therefore, inside of my space, now I have somebody saying, yo, you can make a rap album. You can make an album to soundtrack your story. You can make a movie based on your story. You can go on tour, make a book and merchandise based on your story. And it seems like a sweet deal. It's a sweet deal. You're like, hell yeah. I can get some money off my story. Yeah. And you'll follow the cadence. But the thing what has to remain? What has to remain? You got to stay inside of the story. You can never defer from that path. That's what it is when you're not doing the internal work. That's what you've been doing. You got to stay on that path of that current, and you must every and this we talk about going through the different shifts of the self, and you got to create another identity based on that space. So now when you look at the aspects of, you look at rap music, you look at rappers, now you can have another understanding because that's what they're doing. These niggas are 40 and 50 years old, still stuck, or they still must project to preserve the perception of the value. They got to keep projecting from that emotional point. It don't matter how far they go along, at a point in time, even they have a choice. At every given point in time, you have a choice. Am I really doing the work? Am I really doing what I need to do right now? Or am I avoiding some shit? That's at the point that you're at now. That's the point that you are at now. That's your unknown. What do I do now? What do I do now? That's what you see in front of you being reflected inside of the state with yourself. What do I do now? Oh my God, they're shutting down. They're shutting down. They shutting down the world. They shutting down the fucking world. They got all these vaccinations. This is how I gotta belong. They got niggas out here looking like they pregnant. They got niggas doing this. Is this what I need to accept inside of my space in order to belong within the identity of yourself? And that's what you just keep doing over and over and over again. You keep adding to the collateral clause. That is your life. It don't matter whether you dislike it or like it. It don't matter whether I dislike something or like something. That's sympathetic. The point of me understanding myself, to come to understanding, is I have to be able to say, why does that bother me? Exactly. What narrative have you accepted inside of your life that you want to feed from? You can go back and forth with shit because that's going to leave you in a state that leaves you inside of your own variances with yourself, where you're battling back and forth with their own internal conflict with yourself of not knowing which way to go. How about you step into one of these paths? That's what you've been doing the entire time. You just did it in an unconscious state. But now when you become aware, you got to look back at the thing that hurt, the thing that fucks people up about becoming aware is, do I continue doing the same bullshit, or do I look back at what the fuck I did? I've done some shit. My shit was based on reaction. My shit was based on reaction. My shit was based on these aspects. That unknown aspect is all that shit you did. Why you did it. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you do. How far. I don't care what you think you gonna do. Or, ooh, I'm gonna build a school. I'm gonna do. That's a feel-good feeling for you. That's a feel-good feeling. That's a feel-good thought. You would still want to feel good, but you're not ready to. You got to break that shit down. Like when I tell people the literal, like the last post, the second to the last post that I made was, I am raw, I am impartial. I am raw, I am impartial. I've been through my gates. I've carved my name on the gates of hells inside of my darkness. Me and my shit, we are no longer an I, we are one. To own that made everything make sense. You can own it. You have to own your shit in order to, or else you always going to try to create where you're not willing to go. You will recreate the responsibility to give to someone else. That's what the CEO of the company does. That's what the CEO of the company does. That nigga ain't got no fucking college education. He had a dream, put it together. He got a board of advisors. He or she got a board of advisors to advise them how to do the things that they're doing. And they still remain themselves at the top and feeding from everything. But you got sold through your experience. This is how you create from that thought, that dot. This is how you created. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like you start looking at that shit be funny. But you moving in this space with yourself and you look at that and you're inspired. The key that the feeling that you're feeling and why you're feeling it is the same feeling, that confidence is only based on your level of competency, how you comprehend it. Somebody saying that you look great, you look ravishing, you look great. Your level of comprehension. You've heard it before. That's why you react to it the way you react to it. You've heard it before. Especially if you went through especially when you went through the sexually traumatic experience or you lived. I wish I could have gave that post. Johnny, when you made that post, I wish I could have gave that post like more fucking ha-ha-has. I want to create an emoji with that because I was like, yeah. Everything that you keep doing inside of your space, you looking at a point of reaction with yourself to see if something else can give it to you so you don't have to do it. When it boils down, think about your experiences based on the traumatic events. You looking at shit outside of yourself to do things for you that you are not competent or you do not comprehend the basis of how to do it to yourself. Because you're still looking for a result. You still need that acceptance. You're always in some way, shape, or form. Your collateral clause, the avoid whatever wound is present, whatever you have not expounded upon, you look for a way to feed it. You're afraid to starve it because it means you don't exist. It means everything that you created has to go away. It means every attachment that made you feel anything has to now be assessed. It means every attachment that you've ever made has to be assessed. That's a lot to put on the human narrative. That's a lot to put on the ego because it isn't meant for your ego. It isn't meant for the human to under. You want to be a god. You want to be the goddess. This means being impartial. You've read the story and that's where you met your doubt. That's why motherfuckers will literally go through a process because I went through that process. But it's removing the impartial. It's removing the biases. This is when I tell people, like, when it comes to the manifestations, setting your intentions, all that is lovely in the light aspect, but you got to deal with what comes up from that darkness. I don't care what you do. I don't care how many money rituals you do. I don't care how many love spells you do. If you don't deal with what comes up, those feelings, those thoughts that come up, you only committing and adding to the generational trauma any fucking way. I don't care how much you say, I'm nothing like my mother. You're energetically just like your mother. That's why she irritates the hell out of your soul. Because she was an adversary, whether she was an adversary from a past life, because that's 90% of the time what it is. They're an adversary from your past self. They are the embodiment of the adversary of your past self. And until you face it, all you're going to do is keep creating the variance of what a mother should be. But the entire time you create all of these variants, you never look at yourself. It's like looking at it's like think about the stories that you tell yourself. Do you start your stories from the beginning? Uh-huh. Exactly. You keep creating them variances to see which one you want to accept based on that. But you got to understand the root of the emotional cadence that goes to that point. That's what the fuck you put into that in the first place. So whether it doesn't matter whether I've been in 7 relationships or you've been in 20 relationships or you had 100 bodies or you had 3 bodies. That shit don't matter. It's the emotional cadence to the body. It's the quality of work that you put into that work. It's the quality of the intention that you put into that work. See, you got to get past the point where you want to sit there and be like, well, I'm tired of doing shit for niggas. I'm tired of doing shit for bitches and not getting appreciated. That's why I stopped doing it. All you're doing is feeding your wound. Whatever wound was already present is already there. Yep. Even if you don't know who they are in that aspect, that's going to be one of those keys, because that's going to be one of the keys that's going to help you unlock yourself. That's going to be a key to your aspect of your work, that unknown variable. Like for me, I give the example. I always use this as an example. I didn't know who my father was until I was 12. My 12, 13, 14, when I learned who my father was, it gave me an entire different avenue to my life. Now, if I never met this man and I went through my entire life and not knowing this man, at a point in time in my life, I would be triggered to learn that path, because it's always going to be a what if. Even if it doesn't matter what I build. It doesn't matter what I build or whatever I do. That can be something that can be used that I have not owned yet because I don't know it. It's more than me just saying, well, I never knew my father. It's more than me just saying I never knew my father, never knew my father's side of the family. Man, fuck them. They weren't there, because I have to create a story for them in that aspect. I got to create this story. So whoever stepped into that point, they were there for a purpose, but I had to understand, like, oh shit, this is another part of myself I need to understand. Because until I understood, I'm going to give the key and how it all came back around. Until I understood until I met my father, everything that I learned about my grandmother and the lineage of the lineage of the darkness and the conjurers and the witch and all of my spiritual gifts, that what if, that one point, which was my father being the other half of that point, that I needed to go deep within and accept. That was the point that made everything make sense. That's what I needed. I needed that sprinkle. Everything that comes into your space, this is that point. Like when we talk about purging, when we talk about learning ourselves, when we talk about purging, it's past that point of that discomfort, that uncomfortable feeling that rises up, the discomfort, the overwhelm, the anxiety. That's what you need to sit in. I had to sit in that anxiety. I had to sit in that aspect. I had to allow myself to sit in those thoughts that I would have. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe they weren't good enough. Maybe I had to sit in these feelings. I had to sit in that shit. You have to sit in this in order to tap into your highest aspects of yourself, because that's ultimately what it's there for. This shit is not you. This is the route to you becoming impartial. Like, I had to accept my deaths. plural. Not only in the physical sense, but I'm talking about the mental sense. I had to accept all of those aspects as they came up. As they came up, what they came up as. Whether it was the relationship, whether it was the friendship, all of these ships were set to sail based on my course to me becoming the true aspects of myself. I had to step out of the aspects of the time, because in every space that you go into, naturally, every port is going to be based on reaction. Every port is going to be set to a reaction. Do I take this course? It's not even about the parent being impartial, because you have to understand the point of you becoming impartial with your parents is understanding that emotional cadence, why they did it. For me to become impartial, as an example, for me to become impartial to my mother and really start doing the internal work, the healing with my mother, I was forced into a position to where I had to face my mother, everything that she did, everything that she said, the good things that she said, the horrible things that she said, everything in between. I had to sit there with myself like, goddamn. I had to sit with it. I had to sit with it because the shit hurt. I'm telling you, this shit is destructive. I had to sit with it. And that level of acceptance will destroy every identity, every variant, everything that you tried to create based on that point. We're talking about every story. Yes, you're the parent. I'm talking about every fucking story. I'm talking about every time your mother called you an accident. You're looking at somebody that every time your mother said there was an accident, I had to go to the emotional aspect that went to it. I had to go past it because that was just the climax of that story. I had to go past that point. I had to allow myself to see past that point. My mother just saying that just to say it. No. She's saying it because it's based on that same regret. She's saying it because it's based on that same guilt. She's avoiding dealing with that point. I had to accept that she's avoiding to deal with that point. Because until I accepted that, then I would do the same. I would do the same things. I would follow the same cadence, the same emotional cadence. I could not make the decisions that I needed to make, or the decisions that I made were always based in guilt or fear. And I could tell they were based in fear because I would avoid it when I went back to it. I had amnesia of the fucking thought. Oh, it happened. Yeah, it happened. Yeah, that happened. The way that yeah. But, I mean, you got to understand, point of reaction, you got to understand the way I was raised. I was raised in the street. You got to understand I was raised, the way I was raised made me the way that I am. Fucking cop-outs. It was a fucking cop-out. Until you get to that, until you understand that point of your aspect to yourself, everything that you will create will be based on an identity. This is not an identity. This is Papa Lucifer Samdi all day. This is not a job. When I call forth and say that I am a shaman, I am an alchemist. Mm-hmm. But the key to the aspect of your son, you're going to remove the impartial aspects or the biases, because As you looking at your son is a reflection of you. So everything that your son does is going to be the aha moment that you need to be like, damn. Because until we don't move past the point of reaction, everything that we're going to do is naturally going to reflect the same shit that our parents did. Like most of the shit that I heard my pop say to me, or my pop say we did this and we did this, we did this. I would try to relive those same aspects based on the impartial point of saying, well, I'm going to do it this way. What are my examples of that? I have 3 siblings. My brother, energetic, my brother, my twin sisters, and my little sister. But I'm looking at these three aspects of myself that I needed to see what it would look like to do something based on a partial fact or based on a bias. For my brother, running away from dealing with some shit, met this white girl, took care of her 2 kids. Now they have another kid. They living in Alabama somewhere. To my 2 sisters, one sister, she took the bougie approach to not dealing with her issues. And I'm the independent woman, the strong black woman aspect, but still hurting from shit, still needing some aspect, not accepting it. Or to my little sister. Everything that you go into your aspect, you can see the impartial action. You can see the aspect of where it's a bias. Because every time you go to that point, you become the other half of that bias. Every time you go into a space now, every time I go into a space now that was based on an attachment of my family, whether it's the family, whether it's the job, I always reach the other side of the variant. I'm always the other side of the variant. It's not about me feeling bad about it or needing. I don't need to explain shit to motherfuckers anymore. Because now it's about me accepting their level. That's a level for me. Nigga, I said I was a teacher. I said I was a counselor. Let me learn how to counsel. I said I was an advisor. I accepted the role as an advisor. Now I must learn how to advise. I accepted that I'm a shaman, but I must now learn how to use my energy. Now I must learn the roles of a shaman. I'm removing the impartial points so I don't get stuck. It's not an identity for me. To move in this energy, it's not, you can't move with that impartial effect. You can't, because that's a point, and it's a point that you need to show you where you need to, this is where I need to learn next. I don't need to be looking at that as, I'm not looking at things anymore from this point with myself where I'm looking like, it's not about me sitting there and denying. When I say I don't feel guilt, I don't feel stress, I don't feel worry, I don't feel depression, I don't feel insecurity, jealousy, doubt, I don't feel any of these emotions. When I speak that, I'm speaking from the term not based on avoidance of the cadence. I'm speaking from the point of the empathetic sense of me being the true empath, that I understand what that is. And I'm willing to expound and learn further the different experiences of the levels of what that is. So I'm impartial. So now when I go into a space, I'm not looking for anything. I put it like this. When you get a consultation from me, we doing sessions, we doing your work, I don't care what the fuck happened. I don't care why it happened. I don't care where it happened. I don't care when it happened. I don't need to care about those points. What I'm sitting there listening to is the emotional cadence. That's the rhythm I'm listening to. That's the rhythm that I'm listening to. Because I can hear the repeat of the emotional cadence. Because I went to that point in myself to remove myself, to make myself impartial, to listen to the story. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I can going through the process of every time you felt guilty. It's not just about the points that you remember that you felt guilty. Mm-hmm. Speak from the, yeah, exactly. When I move, I absorbed every point where I felt guilty. I had to sit in that space of every point that I felt guilty, not just the ones that I reacted to, but I'm talking about all the points of guilt. I'm going to a point of from the first ever, the feelings of guilt through a miscarriage from my first ever relationship, engagement, to the miscarriage, to the first abortion, to the first aborted fetus, all of those aspects where I felt guilty. I felt guilty. All of that shit, I've already felt it. Going all the way deep into the aspects of how I learned everything from the stream of the guilt to how I learned how to have sex and accepting that aspect, to accepting how I accepted how I looked at love based on the intellectual aspect, the guilt for that, sitting in that space and peeling back those layers and understanding that the experience wasn't shit. It was the emotional cadence that I had to sit in. Insecurity, doubt, whatever it was. I had to sit in that. I had to own that. I made these decisions based on what I did not know. Now that I know, am I willing to go further? So I'm looking at Carlos. You willing to go further? Carlos, give me the memory. Lil Los, give me the memory of when we were 1 year old. And that nigga said, I'm done drinking out of bottles and anything that's not a glass. And going into that aspect of not drinking out anything that's not a glass. Nigga, all right, cool. Go throw it in the fire. That emotional memory, that lesson, nigga, you gotta be willing to burn this shit down. That was my lesson of many lessons. Mm-hmm. Yep. The lack of forgiveness for ourselves, that lack of forgiveness that we take, the lack of understanding the points of forgiveness to ourselves is what it keeps us in the necessity to keep feeding our shadow. The shadow that you created based on the insecurity, and then the light version of yourself that you put into the space that's based on all of your insecurities, based on all of your doubts, based on all of your guilt. The same way that you did it and you kept doing that shit is the same way that your grandmother sat back and she used Jesus as that way of doing that. Jesus was her light. Jesus was her median to feed her shadow. The same way that you'll sit here in the conscious aspect and use the orishas or whatever you want to use, it's feeding your damn shadow. Yeah, you can get some shit. Yeah, you can get some money. Yeah, you can get some shit. But you got to understand, the only way that you're going to keep getting that shit is staying bound to this space. Now you got to stay earthbound. That's what Bobby Hemming was always talking about. These motherfuckers are earthbound. Them motherfuckers are earthbound. You made that shit real. And you put it You made it real and you gave it the cadences that are of you. That's what made that shit real. Now let's go deeper into yourself. With that level of power and understanding that level of power and accepting that level of power, you got to accept that you created your baby father. You accept you created your baby mother. You created everything. You created all that shit. Mm-hmm. You made it what it was. It's only a reflection of you based on the experiences that you wanted to experience. That's your unknown. Your unknown is, what if I experience it for once? I thought this was passion. Your definition of passion is fucked up. It's becoming. If you ain't becoming it, you're simply existing in it. If you're not becoming whatever the fuck, if you're not becoming that shit, you're not willing to become it. That's like motherfuckers. That's like if you want to summon Asmodeus, as an example. I'm me. This is Lucifer all the way. Before I even started this lecture, I'm sitting here doing my normal go-through stuff. I'm doing everything that I need to do. And then the spirits hit me and they were like, you got to go kill some motherfuckers. That's you. That's you. You are a killer. You are the destroyer of everything that is in the old aspects. Own that shit. And I'm sitting there literally like, you sure? Nigga, this is a part of your lesson. If you ain't willing to do it, we'll find somebody else. This goes into aspects of downloads. This goes into aspects of downloads, all the information that you take in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jesus deals in violence. I don't know what Jesus motherfuckers was looking at, but Jesus deals in motherfucking violence. I don't deal in the emotional. I don't deal in the exam. I don't deal in the experience. See, one of the lessons that I had to learn was I don't deal in the experience. Because if I deal in the experience, I'm impartial. That's me being impartial. That means if you tell me your story and I'm impartial, that means I'm going to try to look for it inside of my head, in my memory, and I'm going to try to connect. I'm going to try to attach to it. I feel your story. I feel your pain. I'm sorry. Yo, as you can see me going through these motions, it doesn't exist in me. This has always been me. But the layers of reaction that I put on top of this, that's what I had to remove to get back to this point. See, when you keep thinking about the gods and the goddesses, and they, no. Raw, direct, impartial. I don't deal in time because I am time. I don't deal in regret because I'm not of regret. I don't know what regret is. I needed to learn regret. I needed to learn what insecurity was. I needed to experience jealousy. I needed to experience these aspects with myself, as myself, with myself, to know myself, to understand these points, so now I don't get stuck in those points. See, going through this path, Oh my God, it hurt. And then ever since you've been carrying on that same aspect. That hurt me. Okay. It hurt you. What did it teach you? It does me no good to look at all the good experiences and the good in my life and ignore the bad aspects of my life. Because if I weigh in on all the good that happened in my life, I'm just as stagnant. I'm just as stagnant as I'm looking at all the bad shit in my life. I'm just as stagnant. Don't matter which side that I was on. I'm sitting here trying to choose sides. Old aspects, the bad aspects, I'm looking at it's like old money. The new aspects, I'm looking like it's new money. Either way, I ain't got no plan to deal with neither one of them. I had to understand the aspects of that plan to break those patterns. So you got to understand that cadence, you're breaking your patterns. You're breaking your behaviors. That's the light aspect. But what pattern? What is the emotional cadence to that pattern? Where did you learn that? Where did that come from? Where did you learn that aspect? What is the emotional cadence to it? It's more than just you saying, oh my God, I'm frustrated all the time. Because if I own that I'm frustrated from a space of I'm frustrated, all I'm going to look for is all the reasons how I dealt with my frustration. The longer that I avoid going past the point of my frustration to get to my original frustration, all I'm going to do is keep creating new interest. As a child, most of your interests are based on traumatic response. Most of your hobbies are based on traumatic response. All of these things are aspects of yourself telling you, hey, nigga, listen. Hey, listen to us. We're sitting here in the darkness. That's why you love listening to the trap music, because we're trapped. That's why you like listening to EDM, because you are emotionally trapped. We're trying to tell you what the fuck we need, but you just keep listening to it and building on it based on reaction. Only go into that space only when it benefits you. This is what I mean by you got to accept that your traumatic experiences made you who the fuck you were. And you got to really understand that your traumatic experience made you who the fuck you were. You got to own it. It ain't about suppression. You can go do semen retention all you want. You can go do semen retention. You can go be celibate all you want. You can go be vegan all you want. You can be pescatarian all you want. You can go be a Hebrew Israelite, Mason, all you want. You can do all the shit that you want to do. But it will all be based on a state of suppression and release. See that aspect on suppression and release. What is okay for me to release and what is okay to me keep suppressed. It's okay, brother. We all going through our things. It's okay, sis. We all going through our things. Think about the conversations that you have inside of your life every fucking day. It ain't got shit to do with their problems. That ain't the reason that you attracted to them motherfuckers. It ain't got shit to do with their fucking problems. It's the emotional cadence. It's the emotional aspect. It's the guilt. It's the doubt. You still looking for somebody to take care of your guilt. You still looking for something outside of you to take care of your guilt. Replacing that vice. It looked good on paper. That's why I want to get married. Why ain't nobody marrying me? Why you ain't married yourself yet? I'm impartial as fuck. Have you married yourself? This is how you change the paradigm. This is the overall of how we attack that paradigm. But the personal aspect, that's what that's what we get into. I can't give you an overscope. I can only give you the overscope. But to change the paradigm, you got to be willing to do shit that your ancestors were not willing to do, that they did not know to do. You are in the climate of that aspect. You are in the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius is the age of knowing. That means every decision that you make is based on breaking and literally being the adversary to the emotional points of your ancestors, to your whatever happened. Because you can get stuck in that aspect. I can get stuck in the shit all day. I can recite and regurgitate this all day. I can regurgitate these books all day. I can regurgitate from the cards all day. But until I get to a point to where I challenge it and understand the challenge is not bad or good, the challenge is the state of me ready to advance, I got to remove the bad and good. I got to remove the old moral compass. I got to remove the impartial points. I have to accept based on a level that is not based on me trying to keep myself in a certain result. I must trust my process. 1 second. Plug that back in. Are you willing? The question becomes, are you willing? Are you willing? Are you willing to challenge what you thought or what you defined as what would make you happy? The point of this, when you're getting into this work with yourself, you're all fucked up and shit. I don't care. Are you willing to step past the point where you keep creating and you know that you do it? The whole aspect of this is like, you know that you do it. That's the unknown. That's you realizing that how you do it. It's the why is your unknown. Why did I do this? Why did I put this out? Why did I think that for 10 plus years of my life, did I think that for 10 plus years of my life, did I think that direction served me a purpose? And looking at that direction of my life and being able to own what I did on that path, that direction of my life, to a point to where I'm able to speak about it without guilt, without insecurity, and allowing that feeling to come up and owning it based on I didn't know. I had something I didn't understand. I was not willing to go to that route. Because now as I keep going, purging back into that point, now I understand why I created these certain responsibilities for myself. Because that would be the point of me being, this is me experiencing what being a mother is. This is what me experiencing being a father is. This is what me experiencing being an uncle is. This is what me experiencing that is. In owning that aspect. Instead of me saying I did it, I didn't want to see the child fucked up. I didn't want to see this. I got to go past that point because that's still me staying in a responsibility. My willingness goes beyond any responsibility. Therefore, every space that I go into, I can be what is needed inside of that space and accept who I am inside of that space. I can accept everything that comes of that space. You ain't willing to do that aspect. You got that work. That's this aspect of the work you have to do. It's not about you being right or wrong or trying to find it's about you becoming impartial in your in everything. This is the impartialness, the discernment, the ability to adapt to every space, not on creating a variance or an identity to exist, but understanding that that is a point of yourself to access that full range of that power in that space. Until you get to that point, you still gonna be stuck in levels. You are going to look at every fucking post and you're gonna react to it. You're gonna look at every post that's about some shit and react to it. You're gonna respond in some way, shape, or form to the COVID shit every fucking time, every fucking killing, you gonna keep getting hit over the head over and over and over again because you can't accept that experience in full because it challenges your what? It challenges your what? See, what to think, that's kinetic. What to think, I search for the answer to best fit to stay within comfort. My why, that's potential. See, in between these 2 points, that's where you get to conspiracy theorists. This is where you get to conspiracy theorists. Oh, I'm a empath. That's where you get into the light of the space. Oh, the reason I feel everything because I'm an empath. The reason that I feel everything because I'm an empath. The reason that I do this is because of this. The reason that I do this is because of this. Oh, it all makes sense. You still trying to make sense of the shit. As long as you still try to make sense of the shit, you still stuck. Because you're going to try to create the variables to make it make sense. Instead of looking at it for what it actually is. Like when I look at, every time I hear about a COVID case, I literally had a conversation with one of my clients in their first session yesterday. It was a reset moment. It was a reset moment for them. If you looked at it as anything else, it's a reset moment. It was a reset moment for them. The same way if you come to me talking about, so what is my experience with death? I have a lot of death going on around me. Why does it bother you? What died? Was it a family member? What about this family member? It made me feel about all of this, and all of the third. Okay, cool. It made you feel that certain type of way. That's great. You're in fear of a transition. The simplest aspect of what death is, it means to transition. It means to let go. It means to transition. The more death that you see, the more shit that you know you need to the more death that you're seeing, the more that you realize every time that you react to it, it's time for you to transition. It's time for you to release some shit. It's time for you to go through the process. You're not going through the process. Just like if you look at the aspects of a job and your job ain't working no more. What was the emotional cadence that made you go to that job? I wanted to change. I was tired of doing this in my life. I wanted to change. And this is an example of my changes. What did you look at inside of your job? Did you attach to things based on reaction, or are you looking at it based on response? Because when I look at my last job, my job taught me everything that I needed to know. There was nothing more that it could teach me. So I was automatically coming to the point of the COVID shit. It made more sense. Everything else that I already had said, that I already had put out into my space, it was in order for me to manifest and for that to come into my space, for me to become closer to what I needed to come to, that had to be removed. But I had to go past being impartial. I had to move past the bias. I can make it work. I had to go past the points of bias. I feel powerless without money. I feel like I can't provide. I feel like I can't protect. I feel like I had to understand the real reasons of what providing and protecting was. I had to stop using that as an auxiliary point for me to remain stagnant and have a false sense of progress, and then create aspects that were based on a false sense of progress that would be my peace or my happiness. So now I'm not going to be sitting there in a space with myself and being like, my lady is my peace. My kids are my peace. No, they're reflections of myself. I'm not dressing them up for I can't dress it up. That's what happens with a lot of motherfuckers. This is what happens for a lot of people. You keep trying to dress up your bullshit. You keep trying to dress up the result and try to make it something else without looking at it first and understanding that when I was in the space, when I created it, what was the emotional cadence? Was it stress? What was the root to my stress? What was the root to the stress? What has always been because from the surface level, take an example. You can sit here in your life right now and you can be like, this woman or this man is everything that I see that I would want in my life to go forward with. But that point of reaction, I have you trying, you only can use based on your level of light, based on your level of darkness. So until I expound into my darkness into a certain point, now I'll realize that most of the times my cadence was based on attachment. So as long as I stay attached to this aspect, it only magnifies what is already present within myself. That's what every relationship is. It only magnifies everything that's within inside of yourself. You can't stop. You got to stop seeing this shit as the resolve and start seeing maybe I do need to sit the fuck down. This nigga right here is nonchalant about everything. He don't think that way. She don't think this way. How do I get to that point? If I sit the fuck down and listen, not to reply, not to say, not to try to be right, but to sit in the emotional cadence, I can learn some shit about myself. Because that's the reciprocal. At the basis of reciprocal. Every space that I went into, I learned something. The key of moving forward is how I applied it. Every space that I go into, I learn something. I learn what I need to learn. So if I go into a space and every time I go into that space, these motherfuckers is talking about the same shit they were talking about 3 years ago, what did I learn? I learned that they're in a comfort there. I learned in myself that the reason that I kept going into that space is because it was displaying into my comfort zone. It didn't matter if it was bad, good, whatever the fuck it was. I was in my comfort zone. I knew how to react to them. I knew exactly what to say. I knew whatever information I could bring into the space could make them say some shit and think about some shit. But ultimately, they were in a state of comfort. So them not listening to me, them not responding the way that I wanted them to respond, it was letting me know about myself. Boiled down, the emotional cadence was based on acceptance. Most of your trauma bonds is based on acceptance. Most of the motherfuckers that are around you are based on acceptance. If you step out of your box, they'll quickly bring you back in. No matter what it is. You can't go do that. You can't act out that way. But what if you went past that point of busting somebody in the fucking head? What would happen after that point? If you went inside of your mind and went past that point, the only thing you're going to see is what's already present. I'm going to go to jail. They're going to lock me up if I hit that motherfucker in the head. That's the other side of your experience. You're already locked up. You're seeing yourself for what you really are. If I hit that nigga in the head and I go to jail, they're going to lock me up. You're already locked up. This bitch keep talking shit about me. I'm going to go upside her head. The job ain't going to do nothing to me. I'm going to end up getting fired. Or this is going to happen. Or that's going to happen. You're seeing yourself for who the fuck you really are. That is the monster. That is the other half of yourself. That is your shadow. That motherfucker that come out when you angry, depressed, whatever it is, that is your shadow. Hello, welcome to your shadow. That's the motherfucker you've been feeding the entire time. See, when I understood that point, it changed everything in the narrative of myself. Because a lot of those shadows that I would see, it wasn't even a shadow of myself that I could recognize. It was the shadow of seeing my pop. It was the shadow of my pops. It's the shadow of my mother. The variant that I created of my mother. The variant that I created of this person. That's who I was really seeing. I wasn't ready to accept that shit. So I go run back and revert. So whether it was a relationship, the job, no matter what it was, the same emotional cadence that got me to the breaking point is the same emotional cadence that I stayed within that space. So I was always frustrated. I was always insecure. I was always in doubt. And all I would try to create is different reasons not to be insecure anymore. I would create different points of blame. You must not love me because you're not willing to do this. You really don't fuck with me because you're not willing to do this. Same shit that my grandmother did, my grandfather did. Same shit that my mother did. Same shit that my father did. Same shit that I've been doing the entire time down the generational line. Nobody was willing because in that space, whether they knew or not, that wasn't the case in point, but they weren't willing, so they created a responsibility that fed that even further. That's how you got here. That's your soul contract. Are you willing to do what is needed, what is heinous? You've done most of it having your life any damn way. So some of it's going back to those steps. Damn, I did do this, but I felt guilty about it. Damn, I did do that, but I felt guilty about it. I felt resentment about it. Damn, I did do what was necessary, but the emotional cadence that I attached to it, that's what I'm not forgiving myself for. The fear that I felt, I'm not forgiving myself for it. I still have the regret on the table. That's what the ownership is. Once I started taking ownership for those aspects of my life where I made those decisions, once I removed and became impartial, that means removing and understanding the emotional cadence, and that actually became a defense. Defense is natural. Defense is only based upon the offense. So if my offense or my offensive cadence is not in balance to the willingness of me becoming, the willingness of my growth, the willingness of me pushing forward, the willingness to that aspect, then my defense is not going to be willing to defend my offense. See, I'm willing to do what is needed to break the curse. Whatever is needed, with no regret, in the warrior aspect. I own that. But it's not based on me, because when we think about defense, we think about it from this space of, I got to go get the guns and I got to use the gun. The defense is simply me having the gun, me having the ability to use this weapon, but never having to draw it. Just me simply having the understanding of this weapon, this tool at my disposal. That's all I need to have. I can move in offense clearly. When you look at this space, your environment, you see that every single day. They don't got to do shit because they already have a defense in play. The defense is you're stuck in defense. You're stuck in the delta state with yourself. You won't move past that line. You won't move past that line with yourself. You won't make that decision with yourself. So what you do naturally is you try to create things or bring things into your space that reflect that point. Something for you to be offensive about. I'll die about my kids. So without your kids, you would die. So what you're telling the universe, what you're telling your energy is, anything that's based on children, that's why you'll die. So you're defining your death under that aspect. But what about your traumatic wound? Now I need to give you a wound. I must have a wound that is present to echo that from myself. Because without that wound, I don't have the identity to even say that. I don't have a reason to say it. I don't have a responsibility. See that point of that willingness? Everything that I do is in the willingness to expand. So I'm willing to, if somebody's feelings get hurt, their feelings get hurt. If somebody, all I'm doing is exposing aspects of themselves anyway. I've done the same thing anyway. That's why I was the drug dealer. Because I was exposing niggas to I was helping motherfuckers cope with their vices of their life. That's why I did that. That's why I went through that experience. But if I got stuck in it and I created things within it, I got to own that too. I got to own every experience. I got to own every experience. I cannot keep moving in this cadence with myself where I'm not owning these experiences. I did that. Can I have that conversation? Because if I'm not willing to have that conversation, then how the hell can I make my album? How can I write that book? How can I learn how to put that album together? How can I learn to put that book together? How can I learn not just to have somebody put me on a tour, but I can create my own tour? I can create the fun. I can create the aspects of that. If I'm not willing to go to that point, then what is the point of me doing it? This is the depth of your passion. Removing the glamour. This is you putting yourself into that space. If you're not willing to put yourself into that space based on you don't understand the emotional cadence, then why the fuck are you even doing it? To cope, to hide, to stay safe, because it naturally reflects in your space after about 6 months of you doing whatever the fuck you wanted to do, after 9 months of you doing what the fuck you were going to do. The moment that something happens that's uncontrollable, the cadence that needs to shock you back into your become present, you lose your goddamn mind. Oh my God, this shit happened. And now you stuck on what happened before that. Greetings. Now you stuck on what happened before that. Because that's where you really were. You always go back to where the fuck you really were. Whether you want to realize it or take it in or not, that's where you keep going back to. You keep going back to the original space. From that original space, you try to put yourself back together and look back at those reactions. It's time to stop looking at those points of reaction. Your fear of the unknown is what keep reacting to the same shit. That's why you can sit there and you had every nigga that you get with, every chick that you get with ain't shit or whatever. They're not shit. They're not providing. They're not protecting. They don't know how to nurture. Do you know how to nurture yourself? Not on the level of you can maintain your job, not to the level of you can go get your hair done, not to the level of you getting your hair done and debate the external sense. I'm talking about taking care. Are you willing to be vulnerable with yourself? Because that's what you reflect into your space. Your inability to be vulnerable with yourself. And then think about every conversation and every argument that you have. You just don't get me. You don't understand it. And you keep trying to explain it. But you don't understand your own emotional cadence. I had to understand that I didn't understand my own emotional cadence. That's why there was always That's why I always took every disagreement personal. That's why I took every argument personal. That's why I took every perception of me personal. Because I did not understand my own emotional cadence. I'm frustrated as shit. So, of course, everything around me is going to display frustration. I'm feeling abandoned to myself. So, of course, everything around me is going to feed my abandonment. They're never going to be good enough. There's always going to be something wrong because there's still something that I haven't dealt with. They're showing me what it is, whether they're extra childish or the aspects of how they manage money that bothered me. That's all me understanding myself. When motherfuckers did not understand how to manage money, that's emotional literacy. Money is simply the byproduct of emotional literacy. You get excited, you want to go spend some money, then you feel down because you spent the money. The guilt was always there. The doubt was always there. It just got exposed at that point. You ran out of money, now you're insecure again. It didn't just pop up. They didn't make you insecure because they spent all your money. You were already insecure. You use money as a conduit or a buffer to hide your insecurity. You use sex as a buffer to hide your insecurity. That was your only trick. That was your way of attachment. Exactly. That was your way of attachment. So as long as you attached in that manner, you were cool. You were comfortable. But when that shit got removed, you didn't know how to act. Oh my God, he don't want to touch me anymore. That means he don't love me. Oh my God, she don't want to suck my dick anymore. That means she cheating. And then you created a whole nother level of reactions instead of learning aspects of yourself inside of the space. Think about how many relationships you've been through. And if everything's a reflection of me, that's what the fuck you gonna deal with. That's your unknown. Damn, that's my unknown. If you ain't willing to go through that point yet, then nothing else makes sense. Of course you're gonna dive yourself into a book. Of course I'm gonna be celibate for years. Uh-huh. But it goes deeper than the aspects of the slavery. See, slavery was just a byproduct. You got to think about the emotional program that came to that point. You got to take the ownership of every book that we've ever read. It talks about it was in the prophecy in the aspects of you were going to sleep. So slavery was a part of you going to sleep. So when you awoke in this space, what would you become when you first wake up? Think about when you first wake up. How do you wake up? Do you wake up irritated? Do you wake up upset? How do you wake up? You wake up a slave to your damn emotions. You wake up in fear that you ain't gonna be able to pay a bill. You wake up in fear of some shit. You wake up a slave to your emotions. So now go back to slavery. You had the history aspect. In order for them to understand that they had to be slaves, they had to think about death first. They had to give them their own aspect about death. Oh shit, nigga, I needed to experience death at this level. Uh-huh. This is my example of experiencing what death is and what death isn't. These are the different variables of my grievance. If I don't understand what grief is, I got to understand what grief is. In order for me to champion past it, I got to understand what grieving is. So I have to have the fear instilled of what death is. I have to have the experiences to learn it. So I got to accept it. It's one thing to say you're the original. If I'm the original thought of the darkness, I have to accept everything that came with it. If not, this is how I create the trauma. I create reasons to stay stuck. I create reasons to stay stagnant. I create these reasons to stay within the space that I'm in. And then on the other end of that aspect, because I'm separated from myself, I'm going to create reasons that I can advocate against it. I'm going to fight against it. I'm going to push against it. But that's the only true reason to do that is because I got to keep that there. I always have to have that present. I was a slave. That's why I'm angry. My mother did this. That's why I'm angry. Same emotional cadence. You came down here to learn the cadences. You came down here to experience that shit. oh my God. Oh my God. Once I got past my own bullshit, that's when everything that I learned prior could instill itself. But I had to get past my own bullshit. I had to get past my own bullshit. I had to get past my own biases, and you just coming in those variances. Mm-hmm. But the key is with people taking advantage of you, you looking like a complete fool. The key is, where was the first time that becomes a question to yourself? Like, when was the first time that you experienced somebody taking advantage of you? It becomes, you have to go to that point. Like, what was the first experience for myself that I felt motherfuckers was trying to play me, or thought I was stupid, or thought I was dumb? It can be everything from it can be something as simple as the first time you were happy about your first A, and your parents put you off because they were worried about the bills, and that became an aspect and they got stuck into your head. Or it can go into a deeper aspect with yourself of, you didn't make a good enough grade and you tried to show it and they were like, you can do better. These are those cadences that we have to understand with ourselves, because until then, everything that's inside of our space based on the reaction connects to that reaction. It's deeper than it's like, what birthed that from yourself? What gave that life? What was the first aspect or the first example that gave that thought life? Because that's when you have that, when we get to that original thought with ourselves, it allows us to be like, oh shit, everything is in. So now, as an example, as for me, I realize, and I've been realizing in that space, that everything is reacting to me. It don't move unless I focus towards it. But it's not the physical aspect, it's the emotional aspect. That's why when I can talk about slavery, they were slaves to their emotions. It boiled down to the emotional aspect. So they did things based, that's why you can see the triumph stories in slavery, because it was the aspects of the emotional aspect. That same generational scar went forward, and you just kept acting out that same aspect. It's a state of reaction. Most niggas are in a state of reaction. Exactly. And as we get deep into these aspects, like, remember, this is the overall. You take what you need to learn. You want to go deeper, set up the session. This is the key. Like, I've set up, it's one thing for us. This is what we have to understand with this aspect. It's one thing to bring it to the surface. It's a whole nother aspect to have the vessels that are available to deal or to have that conversation. That's like the most important part. It's like, it does us no good to keep voicing our shit if nobody is sitting in the seat to be impartial. I sit in that seat, I've been talking about in this lecture. I sit in this space to be impartial. I can take in that's what being the shadow worker, that's what being the shaman, that's what being the alchemist, the occultist is. It's not based on the identity of being a leader, because when you accept that position, you accept the lead within that space. So when we're looking at our spaces and you're looking for, like, when you attach to something based on the emotional aspect, the simple lighting aspect, You're looking for somebody that's not going to lie to you. But because you went into that space under that emotional aspect, the moment that something doesn't fit or the lie hits, it'll always go back to that point. It'll always go back to that point. I don't care how far ahead I got in my life in a physical sense. Let somebody lie to me. Let somebody upset me. Let somebody lie to me, betray me, upset me, abuse me in a certain way. I guaranteed I went right back to the same point. My mother lied to me. My pops lied to me. All these people did all these things. Some shit that I didn't accept yet. Until I got to the point like, damn, they only doing it. The first layer, the first of many layers was they were only doing it from a space with themselves based on what their reaction. So the next layer was learning that reaction. Going past it, going into, oh shit, simplifying it. See, you have to be able to simplify it. That's going through the aspects of your hell. That's going through the aspects of your darkness. That's purging. Allowing yourself to step out of that space. As long as, this is the key. Why I sit here, if I sit here and keep talking about there's layers and there's a matrix and they're narcissists and they're abusers and there's agendas, I'm still on the surface. I'm still on the surface. My ego still feeds. I'm still on the surface because I'm not purging into myself. I'm still looking for blame. I'm still looking to point fingers. I'm still looking to point fault. I'm still looking for something to keep me from going deeper inside of myself. See, I'm past levels. I'm past layers. I'm past the levels. I'm past layers. I'm past conspiracy. I'm past those points. So since I'm past those points, I can now see them points from what they are in my experience based on myself. So I'm impartial. So now I can accept it and see it for exactly what it is. It's deeper than whatever this self that you created based on the identity. I had to understand that it's deeper than this self. Even thinking about the aspects of self and what I thought self was, I had to question self. It's deeper. I had to go deeper than that. I had to allow myself to go deeper than that. Because when I thought about knowledge of self, based on those same emotional aspects, that same cadence was still there. I connected to it based on that. So now I'm looking at shit like I'm still using the same shit. So now instead of me owning still needing an identity to survive or exist, now I'm a Moor. Now I'm a Mason. Now I'm a Kimite. Now I'm conscious. Another thing for me to cling to. Got to go deeper. Because as long as I stay in that space, I can react. But I'm a mother. Would you be a mother without your kids? Would you be a father without your kids? I'm a whole fucking father without children. I'm a whole fucking father. Outside of the aspect. Not the aspiration to be, but to become. I am a father. I am a mother. Not in the aspects of needing the external to do it, but that's what I am. You keep giving yourself, this was the level of the experiences that you kept giving yourself. You needed that point to teach you some shit. Mm-hmm. You're coming to a point. It's not really indifference. It's the aspects of being impartial. You got to take this position with yourself to where every position that I go into, I can actually look at both sides in an equal aspect and weigh them. Whatever comes up based on that weigh-in for myself. If I go into a space, like for example, if I go into a space and I know there's something on my heart that I got to weigh out, every time I go into a space, that's what's going to be weighed out onto that space. These are the examples of my heart against the feather, based on what I can connect to it, based on how much I can detach from. It's based on how much I can reconcile with myself without trying to, because that's how we connect. That's how you stay attached to things. That's how you built the attachments. That same generational trauma aspect is how you built the attachment. That's what we learned. That was a learned behavior based on you needing the experience to understand what it was. So I can go in any space and be balanced. I am in any space and be calm. Because now I'm not looking for a reason to fit into it, or I'm not guilty. This is when we work on these wounds. I'm not guilty when I go into a space anymore. It's always going to be this follows this cadence. Every plan is going to follow this cadence. It's not so now when we looking at this space and me making this decision, is this decision based on building, or will it be based on destroying? So now when I go into a space, I must be equally willing to destroy as much as I'm willing to build, because I cannot build unless I first destroy. So I must destroy my old paradigm of thought before I'm even able to build anything. Because as long as anything, No. See, I'm glad you came in on this point. The aspect of me being balanced or in the empathetic sense is like, because when we think about the aspects of balance and perfected, we think about it from this sense, or we see the reflection of a motherfucker you're not reacting. So use an example. I'm gonna build on an example. I was in a relationship. This bitch didn't feel guilty about shit, and that shit bothered the fuck out of me. That shit bothered the fuck out of me. Like, bitch, you ain't taking no ownership of your life on anything. You don't have no guilt or anything. She was avoiding those aspects. Sitting back and looking at their relationship, that was my lesson in understanding how to use my guilt and understanding where I felt guilty about things. It's not about me sitting in a space and avoiding my guilt. It's about me earlier on. It's about me sitting in those spaces of that guilt where I felt guilt. It's all those feelings. It's about me taking ownership and not feeling and not needing the externals to keep me in a state of guilt. Because without me going into that space, coming into that balance, understanding that rhythm of that cadence, I still needed things to make me feel guilty. Whether it was friendship, whatever it was, I needed things to make me feel guilty. So if something wasn't in my space to make me feel guilty, I created something in my space to make me feel guilty. Where I was not willing, I created a responsibility. Where your grandmother wasn't willing, yeah, for her, it wasn't about her, because even in that space, I found myself trying to project guilt onto her in the space. I'm trying to project guilt onto her. So naturally, inside of this space, she don't feel guilt. I feel guilty. She don't feel like she can do anything wrong. I don't feel like I can do anything right. it kept the space balanced. Because as long as I felt like I couldn't do anything right, and as long as she felt like she couldn't do anything wrong, the emotional arguments, everything inside of that space, it kept it in balance. I was always trying to fight to make her see me do something right. She was always trying to fight to try to make me do something. She was always trying to fight to make it like she wasn't doing nothing wrong. So we stayed within that emotional cadence. But I had to understand it went back to my root of me feeling my abandonment issue. She filled out she filled out the contract of me feeling abandoned from myself, my abandonment. She filled the slot of resentment. She filled those slots. She did everything she was supposed to do. Exactly. The key to understanding the point of right and wrong, that will leave you imbalanced. You're to step out of good and bad, right and wrong. Coming into balance is understanding positive and negative. Balance is on the positive and the negative. How much is inside of this positive creates how much is inside of this negative. So in every space that you go into, like the example of that relationship, her balance of negative matched my balance of positive, and my balance of positive matched her balance of negative. So it kept that circuit going. It wasn't until I realized, and whether it was consciously or not, or I wanted to do better for myself, every time that I said or brought something up, like, you really don't see nothing wrong with this situation, that was me challenging the balance. That was me challenging the balance based on what I thought was right and versus wrong. That shit never went anywhere in the relationship because I'm only assessing the external reflection of my absolute. That is the absolute that relationship was an absolute based on what I thought, from what I remembered, from my mother lying to me and my pops, but the way my mom and pops interacted, that was the absolute reflection of that. To assess that and not assess myself didn't do shit. I was imbalanced. I'm depressed. I'm mad. I want to break up. I'm ending the relationship. Okay, cool. I end the relationship. But what's going unresolved? My mother lied to me. My pops lied to me. These aspects that I haven't dealt with. So what will I create? Another relationship to deal with it. Oh, what will I not create? Okay, cool. I'm not going to get in a relationship. I'm just going to stay to myself. I'm just going to stay to myself and get this money. But I'm still creating from that same space. Now I create the job that reflects that same thing to give me a sense of balance. You see how you just keep creating these aspects in your life until you learn the lesson. You keep creating the lessons. Nobody's creating a lesson for you. You're creating a lesson. It's in everything you create is going to be in balance. You are the universe. So everything you create is based on balance. So even in the most chaotic situation is in balance. It's in tune. It's in tune to you. Until you're willing to tip that scale or learn that lesson to tip that scale, you ain't going nowhere. You don't keep repeating the same thing. You don't be sitting there like, man, I done been in all these damn relationships and I ain't learned, like, these motherfuckers don't understand me. Maybe it's you. Do you understand yourself? Old buddy told you that you were cute. Old girl told you that you were cute. Once you're in true balance with yourself, you experience peace. But The first point see, the thing is, this is the key. Remember, there's a level to it. Before you reach peace, there's purgatory. Just like if you think about the Bible story, when you're going through, you're in hell now. Let's use this example. You're in hell now. You got to go through purgatory. Purgatory is everything that you haven't dealt with. Heaven is above that. Heaven is the peace, the paradise. But if heaven is the mindset of my higher self, and I'm at conflict with myself, how can I create heaven if I've not dealt with the conflicts in my hell? See, you got that light aspect. I want that same cadence that your grandmother kept telling you, that all will be forgiven when you go to heaven and all that shit. That's the same shit, the same 7 billion motherfuckers that are waiting for Jesus to come back reflects the same 144,000 7 billion conscious niggas waiting for a fucking ship. You still waiting for some shit. You'll do some things in between the time to kill some time, the same way you did shit and killed some time when you were little. You killed time till you had to go to bed. You killed time. There was an argument happening inside the house between your mom and your pops. You killed some time and you went outside. You did all these, you're doing the same shit. You'll never find balance until you deal with the shit that you created. I had to deal with those shits that I created. I had to deal with that shit. Because when you become first conscious and aware, you step into purgatory. You step into the land of purgatory. You step into purgatory. You step into what is the void. You step into that void, the purgatory. It seems peaceful because, yes, you have over your times here built up some spiritual credit. It isn't this is the thing. It isn't about you could have done something totally different with your life. Because I too thought that way. Most of us think that way. I could have done something totally different. What would you have done? Can you see yourself creating it? Because that's what you've done. This is an aspect of what we've done. This is what we've done. You took that one moment where your mother lied to you. I took that one moment where my mother lied to me, and I created multiple variances based on that lie. And you created a bunch of different aspects. The key is, what's stopping you now? The very thing that we're holding on to is the very thing that's stopping us. The very thing that you're holding on to is the very thing that's stopping you. You know how many times, and you know how many variances I created? The very thing that we are holding on to is the very thing that's stopping you from going to the point that you need to go to. Because it created the physical limitation. The very thing that you're holding on to, that emotional aspect, that point where you got stuck at, where you shit shifted. You holding on to this shifting point. Exactly. That point where you shifted. You holding on to this point right here. This thought. The thought is kinetic. The why is my potential. So the longer that I stay within the space of My mother lied to me. My pops did this. This happened to me. That was all kinetic. That was kinetic. That was what to think. So everything based on that was keeping the cadence or the pattern of what to think. As opposed to me now, why? Now I understand the why. My pops did that. And for me, an example, my pops expressed it. He didn't express it. And when I talk about this expression, I'm not talking about my pops came out and said everything to me. My moms came out and said everything to me. It's the level of accepting what they say. Because my pops, in many different ways, told me what the fuck was wrong with it. But it was my trauma in hearing what he said that I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear no fucking excuse. So since I didn't want to hear a fucking excuse, guess what I would create? An excuse. I create the excuse in my damn mind. But that excuse is fueled by that original thought. That's the kinetic aspect. So now every time that something falls apart, I always go back to that. It's safety. It's safe. It's safe. It's safe for me to go back to what my mom did. I ain't own it yet. It's safe for me to do that. I can just keep drawing from the same deck because it's eternal energy. That's how I learned how to draw energy. My first lesson in drawing energy. I can draw it through the emotion of anger. I can draw it through the emotion of pain. I can draw it through that aspect. So that's how I created my entire space. My whole space is based on pain, suffering, the different expressions of suffering. That's why every time I think about doing something even better, the doubt has to come back up. It was already present. That shit didn't just come out of nowhere. No nigga made me, no bitch made me insecure. Nobody made me insecure. I was already insecure. They were just the example of the cadence to show me my insecurity. I created a scenario in my mind like, this is what I want a nigga to be for me. This is what I want a woman to be for me. This is what I want these people to be for me. If they do this, and this, then I open up. But I denied myself doing that to myself. But then I streamed into consciousness and I found gods and I found goddesses and I found love spells and I found love spells and I found niggas that do readings and I found Bobby Hemmett and I found Brother Panic and Phil Valentine and I found these motherfuckers. I ain't never had a father. These gonna be my father figures. I ain't never had a mother. These gonna be my mother figures. And I just kept repeating the same thing over and over and over and over again. That's all we keep repeating. You just keep repeating the same shit. That's why you get to a point when you listen to certain motherfuckers, like if you listen to the Young Pharaoh and that nigga that lost his goddamn mind, you cannot discredit the experience because it was there. I owned the fact that my mother took money from me. I owned it. I owned that my mother, I held on to the fact that my mother over the years stole over $2,000 some odd dollars from me throughout my cycle of being around her. That's whether I gave it to her willingly or she took it from me. Held on to that fact that she took $2,000 from me. I'm gonna tell you how this shit worked. She took that money from me, no matter how she did it, whatever. As long as I held on to that thought, I never saw $2,000. And when I saw $2,000, I would immediately spend the $2,000 to cover up the feeling that I felt from losing that first $2,000. So I just kept doing the same shit over and over again. My mother calling me an accident. I just kept creating different ways not to be an accident, doing shit on purpose. All to keep her in that space. Instead of accepting, nigga, I'm becoming just like my mother. Passive aggressive, the same regret, carrying on the same traumatic debt that my mother did. I had to accept it. It didn't matter what I would hide behind. I can go grab the biggest onks on the planet. I can go grab my pinnacle necklace, my seal of Moses pendant. I can go grab all this shit. It's all going to be empowered by the intention of the original energy. I seek to have control over my life. But all of a sudden, my mom calls me like crazy. That's because you got to deal with that maternal wound. Your daughter act up. Your homegirl start acting up. That's because they're reflections of your maternal wound. Your father, you still got the father issues going on in your life. You call your energy back to you. You do the love ritual. You do the new moon dance. Now all of a sudden, everybody popping up in your life. You got niggas calling you out of nowhere, talking about they still love you. You got bitches out of nowhere talking about, hey, big head. Trying to remind you of your life. That means you got to sit there and that's the conversation you need to have. Why did you create that? What was the basis of that relationship? That's your answer to getting your power back. If you ain't willing to do that on the way to if you ain't willing to do that, you ain't going to tap into that purpose. And when you do tap into that purpose, it's going to be limited. You're going to tap into that power, it's going to be limited because you're used to limited power. The traumatic experience stopped you from using your power. So you kept creating experiences that limit your power. Where you were not willing to learn, where you're not willing to go back to, you will create a responsibility in the present to feed the necessity of that said shadow. The value that you put on yourself, the values that you put onto your mother, that you wanted your mother to be, where you're not willing to go back and explore those feelings, you will create inside your current space to feed those feelings. I'm going to be the best mother ever. Okay. I'm going to be the best father ever. Let me create the responsibilities. When it gets to, but the original emotional cadence that was in the past, you repeat. I don't care if it's the addiction to whatever you're addicted to. You just keep creating different emotional variances of that addiction. The same way you addicted to alcohol, the same way you're addicted to alcohol and not understanding the basis of what alcohol. That's why when you understood the alchemy of alcohol to sustain you inside of a certain space or inebriate you, so you are now in the spiritual space. Now you got to accept every time that you did it, you were in that space. You were in that emotional space. You got to own the emotions that you were within that space. I was horny. No, you weren't. You weren't horny. That emotional wound came up. Because if you were truly in that space of being horny, because I give you the example. We talk about, the motherfuckers say this shit all the time. When you come into your spiritual shit, nigga, your shit is on overdrive. But That's where you got to learn the discipline and how to use that energy. I talked about this before. You thinking having a lot of the physical aspect of something determines your energy level. Okay, that's how we used to think. Like, I have a lot of sex because I have a high sex drive. You having a lot of sex is not because you have a high sex drive. You have a low sex drive. You have a low sex drive because you require the physical aspect in order to feed the drive or the direction. You need that result to give you the direction. So that emotional aspect, stress, anger, using it as a product to do that aspect. That's why, and I've talked about that shit before, most of the time when you inside of a space, you stuck in some mental buck breaking some nigga. Whether you're a chick, whether you are the queen, and you ain't learned to apologize to yourself, therefore you ain't learned to apologize to anybody or become vulnerable, therefore you get upset. Therefore this brother comes into your space and expresses how he expresses an emotion and he's upset with you. Instead of you accepting the apology to reflect, to assess yourself, what do? I'm going to cook that nigga some dinner. I'm going to go buy this nigga some food. I'm going to go buy this nigga some shoes. I'm going to go lay in the bed naked. Do you ever understand the original intention? Your intention was avoiding apologizing and understanding yourself. So if this motherfucker accept the meal that you cook, it's based under the same avoidance. So you feed this nigga's avoidance. You feed your avoidance. The sexual aspect. You laying in the bed, he ain't gonna be mad, he want to get this pussy. Now you feed the neglect. You feed the abandonment. You feed the resentment. You feed the stress. On the surface level, now you happy. On the surface, now you at peace. But you just recalibrated the old balances of why the fuck you there in the first place. That's why the moment that it don't happen, you go back to the original cadence. You insecure as hell anyway. You in doubt anyway. You afraid of some shit. You got a fear-based narrative any fucking way. So now you, instead of you going within, doing the shadow work, doing the internal work, you find yourself looking for some motherfucker to give you a reading. You find yourself looking for a love spell. You find yourself looking for, I need a love spell to bring our family back together. The same thing your grandmother did to keep the family together. The same thing that your mother did to keep the family together. The same emotional intention and cadence that your mother did. That's why it's the difference between the motherfuckers that are sitting there, they want to get a bag from you, and the motherfucker that sits here and be like, all right, cool. I don't do love spells. I don't do love spells. What I will give you is a spiritual bath, but it's to sit in with yourself. What I will give you is this mirror ritual. The truest of cadence of the truest of vessels will always lead you back to the darkness of yourself. That's all that I'm here for, is to lead you back to the darkness within yourself. I am in that darkness. Been in it, expounded in it, went past it. All this, but I had to go past those points of, because I asked those same questions to myself. What about civil rights? And what about them doing this to the kids? And what about them doing this to this? And what I had to look into each one of those points and why it bothered me and look at it for myself. I had to learn myself in that space. And like, damn, the only reason I'm attached to that is because it's something based on me that I haven't dealt with myself. That's why when I talk about the aspects of motherfuckers look at pedophilia, the loss of innocence of the inner child. I'll give you the same answer every single time. But what about them stealing the kids and the melanin and all that aspect? The innocence. You want to go watch you want to sit down and we watch Monsters Inc. together? And it's already been answered. It doesn't mean, like, what am I going to do to the surface? I can advocate, I can pick it, I can do that shit on the surface, but that's just to make me feel good. But as long as I'm trying to do this to feel good in that aspect and not dealing with my own internal rhythm with myself, that will always exist because it has a point to come from. You're the only one that can create shit in your space. Your environment is teaching you some shit. But if I look at it from a point of reaction, the fear, that narrative, I'm going to keep doing it. So I'll never really build anything. I always think I need to build some shit when really shit needs to be destroyed inside of myself. Until I got to that point, I remember going back to the earlier work with myself and I always realized I was always in this space. I wanted to be a personal trainer. So I tried to be a personal trainer. I wanted to be private chef. I wanted to do all of these certain aspects with myself. I always wanted to help or do something that would inspire or change things. But all of these aspects were only connected. They were lessons, but they were all connected to this external narrative of me finding happiness, peace, security, stability, trying to create it outside of myself. So now I got stuck in the physical world or the material world of money, the money aspect, which is a byproduct of my emotions, the relationship, a byproduct of everything was a byproduct of my own emotional standards. So I can never be in a stable relationship or learn or even go into the aspects of learning the stability in a relationship until I'm understanding the stability within myself. I'm only reacting to what I've displayed, what I've not dealt with. My nothing is my absolute. If inside of my nothing, inside of my darkness, inside of my shadows, is a bunch of internal conflicts and bullshit that I ain't dealt with, what do you think I'm gonna create inside of my environment? So now you go all the way back to your great-great-grandmother. They did it. Grandmother did it. Your mother did it. You do it. And you just continue it. I had to realize that that's all I was doing. I was adding on to the generational curse. I was adding on to the debt. Because now inside of my space, I see examples of what it is on the extreme aspect to eradicate debt. Now I got to look at those aspects. Whether it's motherfuckers saying, because now you got to look at the cadences in that space. Motherfuckers say family is everything. Always put family first. That's a part of your old narrative. You putting family first in this sense, in the emotional sense, is why you're at where you're at right now. The emotions you feel towards your mother, the emotions you feel towards your parents, all of those aspects. You putting family first in this narrative of covering that up and going forward, that's why you at where you're at right now. That's what you keep seeing, what you're seeing right now. So now naturally you see things in your space that are going to be trigger points of emasculating, defeminizing, demasculating men, all of those aspects. You're going to naturally see those points because that's what you need to destroy. The bias. You want to be a god, you are androgynous. That means you are in balance of your masculine, your feminine principles. That means you must destroy the bias of being one or the other and accepting that you are both. But that means you got to take accountability for that wound that you keep holding on based on your mother, that wound that you holding on based on your father, or not knowing your father, or whatever it happened. You got to own that. And let's show R. Kelly. Let's show Lil Nas being pregnant. Let's show transgenders. Let me show the experience to myself to make myself angry. You're not making yourself angry. You're already angry. You're not making yourself depressed. You're already you're not making yourself depressed, i.e., I'm in the lower state of myself. You're already in the lower state of yourself. The trigger point is when you say, "Oh, I'm depressed." I'm in the lower state of myself. What am I afraid to deal with and not let go of? That's what has me depressed. Oh, I'm not where I want to be at. I'm not where I want to be at. I thought I would have this, and this. Did you make a plan for that, or was it based on a pattern? You thought because of what you've been through, that entitlement entitled you to have what you wanted to have. I thought I'd be married at this age. That's what was wrong with my mother. She didn't marry my pops. That was wrong with my pops. She didn't marry my mom. I thought that I would now be in this space, and that's how I was going to break the curse. No. The curse ain't got shit to do with the physical shit that you're doing. That's only the byproduct of your emotional aptitude anyway. So if I'm not doing it from a space of peace, then everything that I create will not be based in peace. If I'm doing it based on anger, sadness, this holding on to that thought, everything that I will create will be based on that thought. Relationship, job, children, whatever it is, I will always create it based in that. I'm always going to create it in an aptitude. I'm going to carry on the debt. I can tell myself that I cleared out the family debt because I'm the first one that went to college. I can tell myself I'm the one that cleared out the family debt because I'm the first one that had a stable relationship for 10 years and we're working on it. But in reality, I just settled. We all have our problems. We all got our issues. Ain't none of us perfect. Perfection is balance. I'm not seeking perfection. I'm seeking balance. That means in order for me to seek balance, I must accept it. I must seek acceptance for myself. Until I'm able to accept acceptance for myself, then I can never seek balance. I will never seek peace. I will create figments of my imagination that let me think I'm happy. I can't create the album. I can't create the story. I'll just keep creating the same shit. It don't matter what I take in. It don't matter what I take in because I'm not willing to take it to the depth. It don't matter how many ancestry.coms or whatever the other. One second. But yeah, it don't matter how many ancestry.coms, how many trips I plan to Africa. It don't matter how many trips I plan to Africa, how many ancestry.coms, how many rallies I go to, whatever I build, it don't matter. None of that shit gonna matter because it's still under the same emotional cadence. When I leave, that means when it's time for me to check out, the lessons in the emotional aspect will have to remain in play. That shit has to remain in play. Think about the shit of the aspect when motherfuckers be like, with their kids, you gotta struggle like I struggled. You're not, that wasn't being done based on like that became a narrative, but it was because they didn't learn anything up to that point. See, when you think about building a legacy, when you think about really building a legacy, in the understanding of building a legacy, building that space, you got to think about it from the point that you're at. And are you able to instill what you learned into that point? Because that's how you repeat it. You just keep repeating the steps. So if you have a child in the space that you're in based on what you learned about yourself, in that space, can you teach those lessons to show them this is the example? Or are you doing it based on the emotional aspect? See, most of these aspects, we get stuck in that emotional aspect. So it's like, you got to start at the bottom like I started at the bottom, because you ain't got no sense of ownership. You don't own it. You didn't take anything in. Even when you built your company based off emotional stress. So now, in order for you to express it to your child, they got to go through the same emotional stresses that you went through in order for them to even understand you. So nobody ever grows. Nobody ever advances. There's a false sense of advancement. That's why you're looking at, give you an example of that shit. When you look at the white CEO and their kid in the family fucking up, and they keep sending their ass to rehab, and you react to it, they just keep sending their kid to rehab. Same insecurities as you. They're just at a different level to hide the insecurity. Because that child exposes their insecurity to their weakness. See, you created your children based off of a weakness. So a lot of us were created based off when we think about the survival complex, sharecropping, all of those aspects, if you were created out of that survival complex, you are doomed to repeat the survival complex. You will create things based on survival. And they say it is the best thing that you've ever created. And then you find yourself doing I'm going to do everything that my mother didn't do for me for this child. But you only doing shit in the physical sense. You never learn guidance. You never learn to nurture. You never learn what true providing and protecting was based on the aspect of the information. That's why you got motherfuckers out there right now. They'll be like, I celebrate Christmas for the kids. Tell your kids what the fuck Christmas is. From there, you can create your own new shit. But you got to tell them what the fuck it was first. That's the scary part for a lot of us. That's the scary part for a lot of you. If you ain't willing to say that part, then damn sure you ain't willing to build anything. This is what I learned that it was, and I found out that it wasn't. You can't have that conversation with your kids is because you ain't had that conversation with yourself yet. You gave your inner child the version to keep them reacting in the negative sense, but you ain't gave them the sense to bring them into balance. You just keep creating collateral damage, and you think that it's okay. I just keep living from a space of collateral damage in my life. So I think that that's okay. So I'm going to keep doing that over and over and over again. And then you just repeat that over and over again. Rinse and repeat. It's not what you're creating, it's the emotional aspect that's under what you created. If my emotions are in fear, if I'm stuck within not dealing with my traumatic experience, then I only can create from the traumatic experience. Go read the story about Pista Sophia. You can go read whatever you want. It's all going to lead back to your aspect of how you created your own story. You were broken out from the womb prematurely to how you came down here. It all leads back to that same story. How do you apply that to your life? You only created based on what you felt because you were blind to it. Exactly. What is your security in your aspect of yourself without anything? Until you can go to the point of really nothing, you're not really building anything. Because it's not probable. Because you need that to exist. So if I need this to exist, if I say I need this to exist, that means I must integrate with this. That means I must become ownership over this. That way, as I move forward, this moves with me and it cannot be used in an aspect against me. I have to own it so I can take it so it moves with me as I'm in one with it. This is you moving through that. This is you integrating with your shadow. So no matter what happens, I am the extremes. So if I became, like, use an example, I became vegan and I was watching if you did not tune into go watch the Drink Chats episode with Waka Flocka. I posted it on my page. His growth was like, I was like, nigga, this nigga's growth is amazing. That was an example. I was like, I listen to certain Waka Flocka songs, but like to listen to him speak in that space, that was a reflection for me to look at myself and be like, damn, I can see where I need to grow. I can see everything that you're going into is you need to see yourself where you need to grow or what you need to let go of, or you feel me? You can see where you're getting stuck at. That's all in the integration process of that shadow. That way you're able to move forward without being separated. Because as long as I'm separated from these shadows or these traumatic aspects that happened in my life, things can be filled into there. So now, instead of using an example, instead of me owning my story and it keeps saying it's his story and getting stuck in that cadence, now I go find that I'm from Legos, or I find out that I'm from wherever lineage that you from, and you find your lineage, you put that in there. So now you look at all of the historical events of that. You still didn't learn nothing about yourself. You found confidence in yourself, but you still didn't learn anything about yourself. In one of those spaces, what was the story of your uncle, your aunt, of aspects of you that you see inside of that space? Same thing when you're looking at the deities. In that same instance, you just keep filling up this space with other shit so you ain't got to deal with it. That's why you thinking the gods is mad at you and the ancestors is mad at you and the deities is mad at you, and you thinking somebody put a root on you. Let me tell you something. From the shadow aspect, don't nobody want nothing from you. Don't nobody want nothing from you. Don't nobody want nothing from you. If you looked at the state of your soul, where your soul and where your energy is at right now, and you look at how you live in your life, in reality with yourself, to be real honest with yourself, the reality of your energy and how you using your energy, who would want that? Really think about that shit. Who could use it? Your life path of you got a year or 3 years to live. Uh-huh. Mystery is your story. The mystery is your story, exactly. Who really? You looking at the physical shit that you doing, and you like, that's why motherfuckers want my energy. You put the root on yourself. The root was already present. Just for you to simply have the thought that somebody put a curse on you, you're getting close, but you got to go deeper. The curse was already placed. You already cursed yourself. Think about how many times you said you were going to do something and you didn't do it. Think about how many things you did emotionally, but you didn't really do it. You stopped because of something else happened. That's how you instilled into that curse. That's how you instilled into that root. That's how you instilled into that bondage of yourself. You've been doing it to yourself. Because anybody in the true sense, and I'm speaking from the true sense of myself, I'm not going to waste time because I understand the aspects of what a root or a curse is. Why would I bond my energy to you? Really think about that shit. Why would somebody bond their energy to you? It would be, for me, it would be irresponsible to come to you and be like, yeah, because I understand that aspect. Why would I keep taking more of the negative aspect? This is why I always tell motherfuckers, like, you gotta, the motherfuckers that you keep going to for that love ritual, that reading, and they keep telling you about the relationship, but they're never telling you about them. They're never telling you about you. That's the same way that they deal with not dealing with themselves. They're a reflection of your aspect of you. That's why you went to them. That's why when you come to, you've been tuning into me, I'm not the, you hold on to the accountability of what somebody else didn't. You didn't do this and you didn't do that and you didn't do this. What would that matter? You're telling me. Because I had to be honest. This is being honest with myself. I had to be honest to a level with myself that took me outside of that comfort zone. That's why I was talking about that comfort zone, that reaction. Reaction is simply comfort. As long as I'm reacting to it, I'm simply comfortable. That don't matter what I do within that space of reaction. Everything that I'm finding is trying to keep me within that space. Like the understanding the aspect, like I've talked about it before. I drink to commune with the spirits. So every Friday, I'll commune with the spirits. Usually the only time I ever drink. Before that, I was a social drinker. That was my interest as a social drinker. So I would drink within the space. But since I'm living within that space, I'm testing the limits within that space. You're looking at somebody that can throw back 10 top shelf Long Islands and like 6 shots of Patron in like 3 hours and don't feel shit. So instead of me using, that was my emotional vice. The things that I would feel in that space were the things I need to deal with. Until I got to a point where like, I really don't feel this shit. That was one of my lessons. And like, nigga, you are different. Your aptitude to what you take in is different. This is an example of the aptitude of what you take in. Once you understand this, you become unstoppable. The same thing when you over there overeating all the fucking time. You only eat based on emotion. So if you're an emotional eater, you're looking at an individual that went from, I felt like, the same thing, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, to I eat once a day. 2 times out the day. The fear of the unknown aspect or the mystery to it was, what would I do within the other aspects of the day? If I'm not eating, if I'm not doing this, if I'm not doing that, what would I put in that place? Now I had to think about, am I going to do something based on regression or progression? And that was the lesson. I remember a lot of times, they reflect your substance. Exactly. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I just keep replacing that with something else. Therefore, the emotion never gets dealt with. I just keep replacing with something else. Friendship, relationship, exactly. They reflect my substance. That's my worth. That's my value. That's what is my value, my responsibility. But that responsibility is defined by, if I'm not able to provide to that, the natural aspect of myself comes to the surface. They didn't make me guilty. I was already guilty. They didn't make me insecure. I was already insecure. They didn't make me doubt myself. I was already in doubt of myself. These are those, but you got to be willing to tap into that. You got to be willing to step into that. Remove the aspects of time. Remove all these results that you wanted. But I thought I could do this and this and this and this. As long as you still clinging to the side of the wall on the fall, you're going to fall forever. You concentrate more on the fall. You're concentrating more on the result of what you're losing rather than falling. That was the same thing when you fell anyway. When you fell asleep. When you go to sleep, you thinking about everything that you didn't get to do in the day, instead of looking and taking gratitude for what you were able to learn within the day. So changing the program. Every time I go to sleep, I am in peace. I am in balance. It don't matter what happened that day. It's the lessons that I'm taking in to the next day. That's the mastery. I learned that lesson, take it forward to the next day. Different results. After the weeks that happen, different results. I'm still in those aspects of those results. Now it's automatic. See, discipline is an automatic tool. Once you understand what discipline is, it becomes automatic. That means everything you bring into your space consciously, now you discipline to it to create whatever it needs to create. You accept what's being created. That's the lessons I got to learn today. Now your avatar acts accordingly. Because your subconscious being the suggestion box, pull it out. What's coming out the hat today? You accept it. No matter what it is, you accept it. You're not, if it makes you feel some type of way, whatever it makes you feel, that's what you need to feel to learn. Until you accept that lesson, it will only repeat itself. That's why they be like, the mind only repeats what's on the heart. The mind repeats what the heart needs to learn. You got to bring it in sync. Once you accept that point, then you can actually start doing this expounding work. That's when you start going through your pits of hell. That's when we start going through these aspects. Because you stop looking for results. You stop looking at the result, i.e. the thought, i.e. stay stuck in the past. You got to take that bitter and the sweet. I want to experience taste. I want to experience luxury. But I got to have my old pattern would not allow me to do that. I could create aspects of that or fake it, but ultimately something would always come and stop me. I'm in a space now where nothing can stop me. I'm in a space, nothing can fucking stop me. Nothing can stop me, hinder me from what I'm doing. I know that I'm in the right space because the things that I'm doing, the opportunities that are coming to me are based in the resources that are around me. I now have the resources around me as opposed to I had those same resources based on the traumatic experience. This is you changing your world. You changing your environment. That's what radiates out. That's what shifts. And then as you learn to accept yourself on that deeper level, you learn to accept everybody else that's on their level. There's people that I know right now, as an example, that where I know were traumatic, were trauma bonds. And whenever I have a conversation with them now, they're still talking like from 5 or 6, 8, 10. They're still talking like we back in the day. But instead of me looking at them and getting upset, first allowing myself to feel that emotion. You dig? Gratitude. To feel that emotional aspect, I'm now looking like this can be a lesson that I can now teach. That's an aspect where I can teach from. I have to change the atmosphere of my space. My air is different inside of my space. My air is different. Everything in my space is different. So anything that comes into my space naturally is going to be their truth. Because if I'm in my truth and I'm in balance, that means everything that comes into my space is in its truth and in its balance. Everything. No matter what it is. So they can be dumb as hell. They just have they're in their comfort zone. So if I get bothered by it, it's letting me know that I'm still in a comfort zone somewhere. That means I'm in a student position. I need to learn some shit. When I'm not bothered by it and I'm now learning how I'm responding, I'm in a teaching position. You got to own all your positions. Everything inside of your space naturally humbles you. When you're in a place of when you're in a space of peace, one thing that I've learned is I'm literally humble at all times. I'm humble as fuck. I'm calm as fuck. I'm nonchalant as shit. I notice that I know when I'm in the right position because that naturally comes up. That I'm naturally in center. I know when I'm in a position that's against that flow because it brings up something that I need to deal with. Instead of me looking at it, this is the key. Instead of me looking at it as these niggas are stupid, these niggas are dumb, to take me out of my present moment, me staying in the present of my now, I can look at them and be like, oh, they're comfortable. My mother is comfortable. Even though she is suffering in the human sense, my mother is comfortable. Because many times before that, I've given my mother the game. Like, yo, we can do this, and this. She wasn't willing to make those moves. I had to understand why she wasn't willing to make those moves. It was that emotional cadence. It was the atmosphere that she was taking in. Until she's willing to step out of that atmosphere and choke, I can't do nothing for her. Until you're willing to die, until you're willing to choke, I can't do nothing for you. I accept you where you're at. Much love, peace, power, and everything to you. But until you're willing to suffocate, I can't do nothing for you. That's you being in the aspects of your balance and being able to do that. That's when you start understanding that God story that you were told with this motherfucker. If God was real, he would have saved all the babies and all that. You get past that point, you understand it's based on their experience to experience the experience of what they need to learn. You start looking at things differently. You stop reacting to things all the time. You now take the thought process. You now actually take yourself. There has to be a beginning part to this story. What is the beginning to that story? You stop looking at the middle. You stop looking for the climax. You start looking at the beginning. How did they lead themselves to that point? Because that's what you do with yourself anyway when you bothered. The same thing you do in that space based on reaction because you don't want to go back to your same point. The same reason most motherfuckers doing what they're doing because they don't want to go back and deal with the original point. So until I'm ready to deal with my original point, how the fuck can I tell them how to deal with their original point? How can I give them the instructions? The download that I get. Even when it came to me getting downloads earlier on. And I felt that through my traumatic experience, being accepted in all these aspects, I would try to say that shit immediately, regurgitate it as soon as I heard it. Until I started to learn, I need to sit with these messages a little bit for myself. These messages make me feel some type of way. These messages bother me. I'm learning to be more emotionally present. I said I was an empath and I wanted to feel shit. I said I'm a psychic. I said I'm a prophet. I said I'm a brujo. I said I'm these things. These downloads are lessons to help unlock these aspects of myself to use this to be impartial. That lesson is being impartial. As long as you are in judgment of other things, you are not impartial. You still going to try to, yourself is still somewhere, yourself is still reflected in that space. It's like I posted a meme. There's some people down here that are, nigga, I'm not love and light. I magnify your shadow. I magnify and throw trees at your ass. Crazy thing about it, I've always been that way. Motherfuckers, I remember from being little and the motherfuckers try to say shit about me, and I would always say some cutthroat shit. I had to remove the emotional aspect or the sympathetic aspect of feeling bad for it because it was the truth. Motherfuckers say something about my shoes. I say something about that. I say that's why your mom ain't been home in 3 weeks. I don't know where the fuck it would come from. But the spirit was always like, all right, cool. I was always in that sense of that protection. I just had to own it. I was always blessed. I had to own it. But I had to accept those lessons. You're going to get everything you need or you get everything that you want. You get everything that you need or you get everything that you want. But to get everything you want, you're going to lose everything that you need. Because everything you need is the lesson. So you'll lose everything that you need trying to keep everything you want. You trying to keep that relationship together with your man. That nigga done cheated on you 9 times. He done had another kid coming on the way. He done slept with your homeboy. And they kept that under wraps. But you want that back in your life. What does that say about your energy? Your girl then hot girl summered, but you still love her. What does that say about your energy? Motherfucker then robbed your ass, then told on your ass, but you still want to be cool with them. What does that say about your energy? Your sister has a different reflection of your father, but you still want to keep that person in your life, but they don't want to accept that part of the story. What does that say about your energy? What does that say about you? That is your guilt. That is your doubt. That is your worry. That is your unknown. You can make it everything else you want it to be, but you got to get to the root of that. I've been to those roots. Been through those hells. I cannot speak if I didn't. I could, but I'd just be repeating it. I'd be the old paradigm. I'd be sitting here going crazy on Instagram every fucking day. I ain't scared. I want this to happen. You're seeing niggas right now going haywire because they ain't integrated with the shadow yet. They still trying to hold on to that identity the way it was. They haven't fully owned it. But even in that case, they're coming into their space. Everything's working right on time. Because if it wasn't, then where would you be? These are those aspects. The curses, the wounds, all of these things. These are the things that we have to have these conversations about. These have to be made normal. You dig? Like, these have to be made normal. That's what the mythos is on. That's when you want to go read. That's when you go read. That's why you were taught in school about the Oedipus complex. That's why you were taught these certain aspects. And the reason that they instilled inside of you and they connected and they attached, because it was based on aspects of your own life. Or it wouldn't have been brought into your space. If it did, it wouldn't be there. But you got to go past the point of reaction. You got to go past that point of feeling good so you can integrate. I can listen to tell when people tell stories, when the people are saying, talking about themselves, I can watch it happen. Because I watched it in myself. That's what my purpose is. I can watch when a person's shifting from the light, and I can watch them coming into the darkness. I can watch them coming into hell. And I can walk you through that because I've been there. I'm only going to lead you back to yourself. That's all that I can see. Think about the movie Constantine when that nigga was scared to see bodies and shit. Dead bodies and shit. I accept that. These are the things that you start accepting. You're not trying to, it's not coming from the space of trying to escape. You got some lessons you got to do. Escape is the last thing on my mind. I know I got stuff I got to do. I'm not trying to escape anything anymore. Since I'm not trying to escape, therefore I'm not going to create based on those escapes. Balance. But I desire you to be the fucking best. As always, I'm always on the end, but I desire you to be the fucking best. But you gotta, all that, the shit that you thinking about is the shit you thinking about is the shit that you don't need to deal with, shit you know you need to deal with. Because that's what's building your space. What's stopping you? That's why I made that video. What's stopping you? If you knew, or if you could embrace the nothingness, if you can embrace the nothingness, you can embrace everything that is meant for you. Remember, everything that is meant for you is outside of limitation. There's no limits to what is meant for you. There's no having a, you feel me? But you got to understand that shit inside of yourself. I had to understand that side of myself. Or I would be sitting here. If you go back to my earlier lectures, you can see the transition. That was the purpose of me going through what I was doing. Because I questioned myself like, man, I don't want to do a podcast. I don't want to do this. But everything that I do, you can see the acceptance and the growth. Everything from simple example. If you look at my first videos, I didn't understand anything about lighting. So I didn't understand about how to project myself. That was an example in that. All the way until I came to the point where I always had the lights on. So everybody could, like, I had the lights on with me. I still was trying to preserve something. All the way to the point to right now where this light, this space, we're in this. Everything was the aspect of a building to a tool. So it's like, that's the emotional aspect. It's like thinking about this. It's like creating my language. That is tonal, my tonal language. When you listen to, if you listen to a Russian or you listen to anybody with a heavy ass tonal language, even when you go to the Arab store, you go to the corner store, them motherfuckers and they talking and shit, and you think them motherfuckers is angry, They're not. I've had conversations with them like, you angry? Like, nah, this is how we this is this us, this is the energy of our talk, our speech. That's what we try to do through the emotional cadence in our side of our space. We've only learned how to talk through the emotion. So you only learn how to express through your emotion. So now you have to think about when you set your intention, what emotional cadence was that emotion set to? Once you understand that, you understand how to become more efficient. I always say my shit in gratitude. Before, when I was setting intentions, I set my shit and it was like, it was under the cadence of fear of losing some shit. Similar to like, go back to when your mother was like, or you said, Jesus, if you help me out with this situation, I will give up something. It was a point of desperation. So when something came through in the space, it was based on desperation. Same thing with you setting your intentions now. If I set my intentions, but the emotional energy is in a lower frequency, then guess where it's going to go to? This is when you start thinking, we don't get deeper into this throughout the weeks, but this is when you're thinking about the aspects of like, you get in a relationship or you have a friendship or you at your job and you trying to manifest some things into your life and you wonder why everybody around you getting some shit. They're all connected to the emotion at the time that you were feeling when that happened. See, you were looking for happiness. You were looking for you were looking for that to make you happy. So motherfuckers that are happy in that situation where they're at, that's why they got that energy and got it in their space. But instead of you looking at it like, I don't understand how this nigga right here or this bitch right here got a man or got married, or this nigga over here got a car or got this, you got to understand they were in comfort with themselves. That's your lesson. They settled. Do you want to settle? Do you want to follow the same steps? Yes or no? Ain't no fuck. If no, then you can look like, okay, I can appreciate that they got what they got based on how they got it. That means I'm in the right position because my thoughts changed. Damn, I can change my shit. See, we don't understand, like, you got shit coming up in your life that can be happening. That's the key to you getting, that's the key to you shifting to the next level. But you looking at it as, that bitch got this, that nigga got this, why can't I get something? You got to be at that level. Are you at the role that's needed for that? Your shit is more. Stop looking at everybody, because that's always going to leave you fucked up. It's time for you to assess that contract. Remember, this is an overall. This is an overall aspect. This is an overall. If you want to get deeper within inside of yourself and you feel like it's time for you, like, that's what I literally do. I'm not just going to give you this and then not give you anything else. This is literally one aspect of me bringing the lesson to you. You want to go deeper, it's more personal. This is an overall. If I trigger you while we in here, that means it's your decision. I'm not here for anything else. That's my purpose, is limitless. That keeps me in a limitless, balanced position. That's when you got to start looking at the individuals that are around you and who's giving you information and what you're listening to and what's bringing you into that space. That's what you got to, this is what you're looking at. Like, this is, you got, like, ooh, shit. Like, this is when you start looking at it. Like, I refuse to bring anything to you from the most humblest position of myself. I refuse to be like, yo, I can't do it. It's not in me. It's literally, I removed and expounded that past that point. Honesty, authenticity. But again, I desire you to be the fucking best. Because I desire for myself to be the best. Much, much gratitude. I appreciate you for stopping through, catching the lesson. From this point, what you do is up to you. From this point, this triggers the new thought. What are you going to do with it? That's your aha. That's the knowledge for yourself. If you left here, if I could have all of that, like, oh, I got 90 million viewers because I keep regurgitating. Nah. We got to go deeper. We got to get darker. We got to get real with ourselves. Honesty is your key. You don't want to be honest with yourself. Go ahead, keep doing what you're doing. No problem. Much gratitude, bro. But over here in the land, over here in this realm of the Godical Alchemist, this level of hell, all we doing is fucking expounding and becoming better. All we doing is forging and becoming the best. Time to get involved. I love you. We love us. Ashe.